So these are my rankings for the top receivers in the AFC. This is based solely off of the leading receiver for each AFC team. This isn't like top 16 overall or anything like that. Going to be the top receiver regardless of position on each one. So it could be a halfback, it could be a receiver, it could be a tight end, shit, it could be an offensive lineman. We're going to get right into the video though. If you guys are new, hit that subscribe button or leave a like on the video. If you do enjoy it, let's shoot for 10 likes. And with that said, let's get right into it. Number 16, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Donovan Peoples-Jones is only 22 years old, and he's had a weird situation at quarterback this season. But for a wide receiver one, he has not had great numbers, in my opinion. He's completed 59% of his targets, a little under 600 yards. He is second on this list in yards per catch and has 3 receiving touchdowns. In my opinion, his receiving yards per game to be a wide receiver one is fucking embarrassing. But I also understand that he has had to deal with a banged up Baker Mayfield, a healthy Case Keenum, and a healthy Nick Mullins. I think next year he is going to be better. He improved from last year. I think next year he will be a little bit better. Number 15, Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore has some of the worst stats on this entire list, but he is a rookie, and his quarterback is also a rookie who has no offensive line and no time to throw it to him. He's completed 56% of his targets, lowest on the list. A little over 500 yards, which is also lowest on this list. He does have 5 receiving touchdowns total and about 12 yards per catch. Again, I don't fully blame him because the Jets weren't expected to be good, and honestly, they weren't good at all. There was barely any positives. If you're able to get Zach Wilson a competent O-line, then I think the Jets could have a top 15 offense in about 2 or 3 years. Number 14, Courtland Sutton. I had Courtland Sutton originally ranked higher, and then I realized that he, in my opinion, was severely disappointing. He played 60% of his targets. He had a little under 800 yards. He did have 13 yards per catch, but he only had 2 receiving touchdowns. I expected this man to be at least 1,000 yards on the season, especially after Jerry Jeudy went out. I expected this man to go off, and it just didn't happen. He had a weird quarterback situation too, with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, 2 players who are just not spectacular. I think next year he will be able to do better. At least I hope so. I think next year he'll have 1,000-yard year. I don't know for sure. Number 13, Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers, in my opinion, is one of the most overrated players in the league, let alone on this list. He is undisputably the Patriots' number 1 receiver. 126 targets were thrown to him. He caught 66% of them, though. A little under 900 yards, about 10 yards per catch, and he has 2 total receiving touchdowns, not just this season, but for his entire career. He has more passing touchdowns than he does receiving touchdowns for his career. And he's a wide receiver. Never played quarterback in the NFL, which, by the way, if you've ever watched a Patriots national TV game, he used to be a high school quarterback. They really harp on any opportunity to say that. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he just needs to kind of mesh a little bit more. He's already really good considering. I think next year he'll be a bit better. Number 12, Marvin Jones. Considering Trevor Lawrence was terrible for a 2-month stretch, it's amazing to me how he even is this solid. Completed 61% of his targets, has a little over 800 yards, about 11.5 yards per catch, and 4 receiving touchdowns, and playing every single game too. Jones was fantastic this year. A little below than what he was doing in Detroit. I think next year, while Trevor Lawrence is progressing, I feel like Marvin Jones will be a 1,000-yard receiver once again. That Jacksonville team has a lot of promise. They just need to find ways to execute it. Number 11, Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, in my opinion, was the best part of that Texans team this season. He somehow, with all of the quarterbacks that they had over 1,000 yards receiving, 134 targets, caught 67% of them, and 6 receiving touchdowns. This is with dealing with Davis Mills, who's pretty shit throughout a lot of the year, and same thing with Tyrod Taylor. Texans need a lot of work, but I do think that Brandon Cooks could be a top half in the league receiver. I think he'd be top 15. He is very talented. Number 10, Michael Pittman. I'm not going to lie to you. I have not been very familiar with the Colts this season. I watched a couple of games, watched some highlights and shit like that, looked up the stats for the video. He has almost 1,100 yards on the year, 6 receiving touchdowns, caught 68% of his targets. That's a huge upgrade from what he was doing last year when his quarterback was Phillip Rivers. No disrespect to Phillip Rivers, but in my opinion, Carson Wentz this year is better than Phillip Rivers last year. That's debatable, but that's another talk for another time. I think he's going to be a little bit better next year. Only a little bit. I think he maybe 1,200 yards is probably his ceiling. But that's not bad in the slightest. So, good on him. Number 9, Jaylen Waddle. How Jaylen Waddle, as a rookie, was able to do what he did this season, especially with Tua turning the ball over as his quarterback, is crazy to me. 140 targets, by the way. He caught 74% of them, 1,000 yards, 5 total touchdowns, and played a huge part in the Dolphins' comeback late in the season. He has great receivers around him, Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, etc. If they can get him a decent quarterback, or if Tua can progress a lot, then I think that Jaylen Waddle could easily be a top 10 receiver. It's going to take time, but I think it's possible, definitely. Number 8, A.J. Brown. I had him initially ranked lower on the list. However, I started to realize he was pretty influential in his team this season and how important he really was to winning football. He got 60% of his passes, had about 800 yards, 14 yards per catch, 5 total touchdowns, and this was only in 13 games, which when he played, he was 11-2. If the Titans don't have Derrick Henry, they need some sort of receiving. A.J. Brown is undeniably the number 1 receiver on that team. He helped bring the Titans out from a very deep hole. Pause if needed. Number 7, Deonte Johnson. Despite his quarterback being old Big Ben with a noodle arm, he had an amazing season, honestly. He had the most targets on this list. He had almost 1,200 yards on the season, 11 yards per catch, 8 receiving touchdowns. It's crazy to me how they have guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, like Chase Claypool, who they expected to be that number 1 guy for them, and it just never panned out. But this man is undisputably the best receiver in Pittsburgh. In the next year or two, I expect this man to be a top 10 in the league. I think a different quarterback, and he'll be so much better. Number 6, Mike Williams. Keenan Allen was originally on the list, but in week 18, Mike Williams took him over. Williams is one of the most explosive players in the NFL. He is 3rd on this list in yards per catch. He has 9 total touchdowns, about 1,150 yards, and has caught 59% of his targets. I love that whole Chargers team. As long as they keep them together, I think they'll be great in the future. I think Mike Williams is fantastic. I think they need to keep that team together for a long time. Number 5, Hunter Renfrow. I didn't know where to place Hunter Renfrow. I knew I was going to place him high because he's been going crazy. I didn't think I was going to place him top 5, and then I looked at some of his shit. He has 9 receiving touchdowns, 10 yards per catch, a little over 1,000 yards on the year. And here's kind of what stuck out to me. He caught 80% of his catches. That is unfucking real. There are weapons like Zay Jones, like Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, etc. Hunter Renfrow stepped up. He stepped up after Henry Ruggs was kicked off the team. I think next year he could be even better. He's still very young, who knows? Number 4, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is the only non-wide receiver on this list. He carried the Ravens this season. 154 targets, almost 1,400 yards on the year, 9 receiving touchdowns. It was him and Marquise Brown this season. There were a few other supporting members, but those are the main 2, and Andrews was far away from Marquise Brown. Andrews, I expect to have a similar year next year when Lamar Jackson's hopefully fully healthy. I think the Ravens honestly could be a Super Bowl contender next year, but I'm not 100% sure. Number 3, Stefan Diggs. Diggs is another great receiver, one of the elite receivers in football. He's caught 63% of his targets, about 1,200 yards, 12 yards per catch, and 10 receiving touchdowns. He is undeniably, for sure, the number 1 receiver on his team, and he's going to be instrumental for them going through the playoffs. If they do have a shot at a Super Bowl, it's going to be because of Stefan Diggs in a huge part. Number 2, Tyreek Hill. For anybody else, I feel like Tyreek Hill would be number 1 on this list. That Mahomes to Hill connection is just insane. 70% of the targets have been caught. A little over 1,200 yards, 9 receiving touchdowns, 11 yards per catch. And this is an off year for the Chiefs too. Tyreek just went crazy this year. He is 3rd in the AFC in yards as well. If this was any other year, I feel like Tyreek Hill would easily be number 1 for a lot of people, but it's not this year. So you're probably asking yourself, who is number 1? Number 1 is the rookie himself. Number 1, Ja'Marr Chase. Chase had an absolutely insane rookie year. He led the AFC in yards per catch, in yards per game, and in total receiving touchdowns. Chase has been insane, and he was competing with T. Higgins too, who had over 1,000 yards on the year. That Bengals team is going to be insanely fun to watch. They could be a dark horse in the AFC. It's crazy to think that this is his first year in the NFL and to think he could only get better, assuming nothing happens, as I know he does have a bit of a checkered past. I guess we just wish for the best, and I cannot wait to see him polish his game. That's it for me, though, for the list. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you all for watching today's video. If you do enjoy and you want to see some more videos like this, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel once again if you haven't already. And with that said, that's it for me. I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.